The airport was buzzing with activity, the low hum of travelers, rolling luggage, and PA announcements blending into a chaotic symphony. Leela Harper, 25, navigated the crowded terminal with her baby Noah strapped securely in a soft carrier. Her steps were hurried but cautious, her mind racing with anxiety. She had planned for this moment for months, trying to reconcile with Noah's father, Alex, who had promised to be involved in their child's life, only to leave her with uncertainty and dread. As she approached the designated meeting gate, her heart pounded. Alex was supposed to be there, waiting to see Noah. Lila's thoughts were a tangle of hope and fear, hope that he would step up, fear that he might reject the responsibility. She held Noah closer, feeling the warmth of his small body against her chest, and whispered softly, "It's okay, baby. We'll get through this." Across the terminal, Alex arrived, dressed impeccably, his confident stride betraying the casual arrogance he often carried. When he saw Lila and Noah, he stopped, a faint smirk forming on his lips. "So this is him," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself, as if he were judging the scene before him. Lila's chest tightened. "Alex," she began, trying to keep her voice steady, "I'm glad you came." He raised an eyebrow, his gaze cold. "I came because I was obligated," he said, his tone dismissive. "But don't expect me to be involved. He's your responsibility." Leela's heart sank. The words cut deeper than she had anticipated. Noah cooed softly in his carrier, unaware of the tension, and Leela swallowed back tears. She had hoped for even a small gesture of support, a sign that Alex would accept some responsibility. But his rejection was absolute, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable in the crowded airport. Leela shifted, tightening her grip on Noah, attempting to shield him from the emotional impact. Around them, travelers moved by, some curious, some indifferent. The humiliation was subtle but sharp, felt in glances, murmurs, and the stark realization that she was alone in facing this moment. Just as Lila began to steady herself, a man approached. Tall, confident, and exuding authority, he moved through the crowd with the ease of someone accustomed to attention and respect. His gaze locked on the scene before him, a young mother, visibly tense, holding a small child, while the child's father stood dismissive and cold. Ethan Blackwell, 33, billionaire CEO, was not usually one to intervene in strangers' lives. Yet something in the instinctive urgency of the moment, the vulnerability of the child, the quiet bravery of the mother pulled him forward. Without hesitation, he stepped closer, careful to remain composed yet assertive. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but commanding, carrying over the ambient noise of the terminal. "Is everything all right here?" Lila looked up, startled. She didn't know this man, yet there was a presence in his voice that made her pause. He won't help," she whispered, almost to herself. "The father, he doesn't want him." Ethan's eyes softened as he assessed the situation. His gaze shifted to the small child, then back to Lila. There was no hesitation in his next action. "May I?" he asked gently, extending his hands toward Noah. Lila hesitated, caught between instinctive protectiveness and the desperate need for assistance. I don't know," she began. "Trust me," Ethan said softly. There was something in his tone reassuring, steady, and confident that left no room for doubt. Reluctantly, and with a small measure of hope, Lila carefully handed Noah to him. Ethan held the child with practiced ease, his posture protective but gentle. "Don't worry," he said, looking directly at Leela. "I'll help." Something in her chest shifted. Relief, surprise, and the faintest flicker of trust mingled in a flood of emotions. The rejection from Noah's father still stung, but in that moment, a stranger, a powerful, capable stranger had stepped in, offering immediate protection and reassurance. Alex, realizing someone had intervened, frowned. Who are you?" he demanded, stepping forward, indignation and curiosity mixing in his tone. Ethan's gaze, calm and unwavering, met his. "I'm someone who won't let a child be left unprotected," he said firmly. The authority in his voice left no room for argument. Alex faltered, realizing that his attempt to assert control had been rendered meaningless. The surrounding travelers watched, sensing the intensity of the moment without understanding its depth. Lila felt a quiet gratitude swell in her chest. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to breathe, trusting that Noah was safe, even if only briefly, in the hands of someone who clearly understood responsibility. Ethan glanced at Lila again, a subtle warmth in his eyes. "You've done an amazing job taking care of him," he said. "I want you to know that your courage hasn't gone unnoticed. You're not alone anymore." Lila felt her chest tighten. a mixture of gratitude and relief washing over her. She didn't yet understand who this man was or what his intentions might be, but the sincerity in his voice and the confidence in his actions created a fragile thread of trust. As they waited for a taxi to secure Noah's safety and Lila's well-being, Ethan subtly positioned himself near her, a quiet protector, assessing every detail: Noah's comfort, the lingering threat of Alex's indifference, and Lila's emotional state. In that tense, crowded airport, a bond began to form, forged from crisis, courage, and a shared recognition of responsibility. By the time the taxi arrived, Ethan handed Noah back to Lila with a gentle but firm grip. "We'll figure this out," he said, his tone a promise rather than a statement. "You won't have to face this alone." Lila met his gaze, her eyes reflecting both hope and caution. The first step of trust had been taken, and though the path ahead was uncertain, for the first time in days, she felt that maybe, just maybe, things could be different for her, for Noah, and for the unexpected stranger who had just changed the course of their lives. After the tense encounter at the airport, Ethan Blackwell decided to ensure that Lila and her baby Noah were safe. He hailed a cab and offered to drive them to a quiet, nearby lounge, far from the bustling crowd and prying eyes. Lila hesitated at first, wary of this stranger's intentions, but the sincerity in his calm, authoritative demeanor convinced her to accept the offer. As they settled into the back seat of the car, Ethan buckled Noah safely into a portable car seat he had brought discreetly from his vehicle. The baby gurgled, glancing up at Ethan while Lila watched, a mixture of caution and relief in her eyes. Ethan's movements were gentle but precise, revealing a surprising familiarity with childcare despite his polished corporate exterior. "You're very protective of him," Ethan said softly, keeping his voice low so as not to alarm Noah. "I can see why." Lila looked at him, surprised at his insight. "I have to be," she said quietly. "He's all I have, and I can't risk anything happening to him." Ethan nodded, his gaze softening. "I understand more than you realize." He glanced briefly at the passing city lights, the reflections dancing across the car windows. "I spent years making decisions that affect thousands of lives, yet seeing you handle one small life with such care, it's remarkable." Leela felt a flush of warmth. She wasn't used to praise, especially from someone she barely knew. "I'm not extraordinary," she murmured. "I just do what I must." Ethan's eyes held a quiet intensity. Extraordinary doesn't always mean public acclaim or recognition. It can mean doing the right thing when no one is watching or when the world expects you to fail. What you did last night, that was extraordinary. The car pulled up at a quiet rooftop lounge overlooking the city skyline. Soft lights glimmered against the glass railing, and the gentle hum of the evening traffic created a surprisingly peaceful atmosphere. Lila carried Noah inside, feeling a small sense of relief at being out of the public eye. Ethan followed, keeping a respectful distance but ensuring his protective presence was felt. "You've done more than most people could even imagine," he said quietly. "And yet you carry it all so effortlessly." Leela seated herself in a corner sofa, holding Noah close. She looked at Ethan, studying him now more clearly. His suit was impeccable, his posture flawless, yet his eyes betrayed emotion, concern, admiration, and something else she couldn't yet identify. "I should know," Ethan continued, sitting across from her, "how difficult it must be to manage all of this alone. Balancing work, life, and taking care of him while still facing judgment from people who don't understand." Leela's eyes watered slightly. I try," she whispered. "I've had to learn quickly. There's no one else I can rely on completely. I make mistakes, but I do what I have to do." Ethan leaned forward, a subtle intensity in his gaze. "You've done more than survive. You've protected, nurtured, and persevered. And yet, you've done it all with grace and courage." The baby yawned, snuggling into Leela's chest, and she smiled faintly, touched by Ethan's words. It was rare that anyone recognized the depth of her struggle, much less acknowledged it so sincerely. Ethan glanced at Noah, his expression softening further. "He's lucky," he said quietly, "to have someone like you watching over him. And perhaps you're lucky too, to find help when you needed it most." Lila blinked, unprepared for the sincerity in his tone. "Help?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan replied, a faint smile forming. "Not just tonight, but going forward. You don't have to face everything alone anymore. I'll help if you let me." The words hung in the air, delicate but powerful. Lila felt a mix of relief and disbelief. A stranger, powerful, calm, and capable, was offering her support without condition. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe, realizing that she might not have to shoulder all burdens alone anymore. The conversation shifted gently to lighter topics: Noah's routines, her aspirations, and subtle small talk. Yet through it all, a quiet trust began to form. Layla noticed Ethan's attentiveness, the way he listened without judgment, and the respect he held for her autonomy and courage. By the end of the evening, Lila felt an unfamiliar sense of ease. She trusted Ethan enough to consider the possibility that he might genuinely want to help, not for recognition, not for control, but because he saw her bravery, resilience, and heart. Ethan escorted them back to a safe apartment where Lila could rest with Noah. "You did an incredible job today," he said quietly, his gaze lingering. "And I hope you know, I'll be here if you ever need help. You're not alone." Leela met his eyes, a spark of cautious hope appearing. "Thank you," she whispered. I I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Ethan said, a faint smile in his voice. "Just know that your courage, care, and strength haven't gone unnoticed. And perhaps we'll figure things out together from here." As he left, Lila held Noah close, feeling a strange mixture of relief, trust, and the faintest hint of anticipation. For the first time since the airport, she allowed herself to hope that with this stranger's support and perhaps guidance, she might navigate the challenges ahead more confidently. The night settled over the city, the lights twinkling in the distance, while Lila, Noah, and Ethan's connection born from crisis, courage, and compassion began its subtle, slow burn. The next morning, Leela Harper woke to the soft sound of her phone vibrating. It was a message from Ethan Blackwell. "Meet me at the park near the river walk. I want to discuss Noah's safety and how we can make things easier for both of you." She hesitated briefly, uncertainty fluttering in her chest, but the sincerity and calm authority in his voice gave her reassurance. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. By mid-morning, she arrived at the quiet riverside park, Noah strapped securely to her chest. Ethan was already there, standing near a bench, observing the small playground with a watchful eye. His posture was relaxed but authoritative, a subtle confidence that immediately put Lila at ease. Noah's small eyes lit up at the sight of Ethan, recognizing his calm and kind presence. "You've arrived," Ethan said warmly as Lila approached. "I wanted to ensure we start with Noah's comfort and safety. I know last night and this morning have been overwhelming." Leela nodded. I appreciate it. I'm still not sure how to navigate everything with him, especially with Alex." Her voice faltered as she mentioned her ex-fiancé, the man who had rejected responsibility without a second thought. Ethan's expression hardened slightly, but he remained composed. "I understand. Alex's actions yesterday were inexcusable. But right now, our priority is you and Noah." Noah squirmed in her arms, reaching toward Ethan. Leela handed him gently over, trusting him to hold the child while she caught her breath. Ethan held Noah with natural ease, a protective warmth evident in every motion. "He's a bright little boy," Ethan said softly. "You've done well keeping him safe, calm, and loved despite the chaos." Lila's eyes softened. "I've tried every day. I just wish Alex would have stepped up. He doesn't even understand what it means to care." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "Some people aren't capable of understanding what it means to protect someone. That's why you're here, and that's why I'm here. He may have failed, but you haven't." As they walked along the river walk, the small family unit of three gradually gained a rhythm. Ethan observed Leela's instincts, how she monitored Noah, responded to his cues, and managed his small needs with patience and gentle authority. Each gesture reinforced his growing admiration for her. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind them. "Lila! Noah!" Alex appeared, approaching briskly with a forced smile, as if he had forgotten the events of yesterday. I want to see him. Let me hold him." Lila instinctively tightened her hold on Noah, her posture protective. Ethan stepped subtly in front of her, placing himself between her and Alex, a quiet but unmistakable assertion of authority. "Noah is fine and he's safe," Ethan said calmly. "You will respect Lila's boundaries." Alex's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "Who are you two?" "I am someone who won't let a child be treated like an object," Ethan interrupted, his voice firm, commanding attention. "Step back." His calm authority left no room for argument. Leela, standing beside him, felt a surge of gratitude. This stranger, now clearly more than that, was protecting her and her child without hesitation. Alex faltered, seeing the firm resolve in both of them. He had expected to assert dominance to intimidate Leela into submission, but he realized his presence no longer carried weight. The billionaire CEO before him wasn't just a stranger. He was someone capable of decisive action, someone who had already earned the trust and respect of both Lila and Noah. Ethan handed Noah back to Leela gently, ensuring the child's comfort before turning to Alex. If you want to be part of his life, you'll do so responsibly, respectfully, and with consideration. Until then, this is none of your business. Alex's lips pressed into a thin line, his arrogance muted by Ethan's authority. He realized that he had lost not because of force, but because courage, responsibility, and integrity were stronger than entitlement and neglect. As Alex retreated, Leela's shoulders relaxed, a wave of relief washing over her. She looked at Ethan, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and growing trust. "Thank you," she whispered softly. Ethan smiled faintly, the first genuine warmth touching his features. "No thanks needed," he said quietly. "I'll always ensure Noah is safe, and I'll help you too because you've earned it and because I respect you." For a long moment, they walked along the riverbank, side by side, Noah nestled safely in Layla's arms. The city moved around them, oblivious to the quiet yet powerful connection, forming a connection forged in crisis, built on trust and beginning to hint at something deeper. The day ended with small moments of bonding. Ethan playing gently with Noah, Lila observing with a mix of caution and relief, and the subtle recognition of shared responsibility and trust. Each smile, each gesture, reinforced the possibility that this stranger, once just a savior in a moment of crisis, might become an ally, a protector, and perhaps something more. The evening sky over the city had deepened into a rich indigo, and the terminal lights at the airport reflected off the sleek glass walls like stars scattered across the polished sky. Leela Harper sat with Noah in her lap on a quiet bench near the waiting area, her nerves still taut from earlier encounters. Ethan Blackwell, the billionaire CEO who had intervened the night before, had stayed nearby, his presence reassuring yet non-intrusive. "Noah seems to really like you," Leela said quietly, watching Ethan play gently with her daughter, offering soft encouragements and carefully observing her small movements. Ethan smiled faintly, a warmth breaking through his otherwise composed demeanor. "He's a smart little boy," he said, adjusting the baby in her arms. "And you're doing an incredible job raising him. I can see why he trusts you completely." Leela's chest tightened slightly. She wasn't used to such genuine acknowledgement. Most people had dismissed her struggles, but here was someone powerful, someone who could have been indifferent, offering nothing but respect and support. Their quiet moment, however, was interrupted by the approach of a familiar figure, Alex, Lila's ex, who had earlier rejected any responsibility for Noah. His expression was sharp, a mixture of annoyance and concealed regret. "So, this is how it is?" he said, stepping closer, attempting to assert authority. Ethan shifted slightly in front of Lila, his stance protective but calm. "Noah is safe," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And Leela is fully capable of caring for him." Alex's jaw tightened. I can see that, but he's still my son, and I have the right to—" "You have the right to be involved responsibly," Ethan interrupted, gaze unwavering. "If you intend to make a difference in his life, you'll approach it with care, respect, and consistency. Until then, this is none of your business." The confrontation was tense, yet Ethan's calm authority and unwavering stance left Alex speechless. Leela, encouraged by Ethan's presence, felt a surge of relief and confidence. She realized she no longer had to shoulder the emotional and logistical burden entirely alone. Once Alex walked away, Ethan turned to Lila, his expression softening. "You've been handling all of this so well," he said gently. "I hope you realize how extraordinary that is." Leela smiled faintly, hugging Noah close. "I've had to. There wasn't another choice." Ethan studied her, noticing the resilience in her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture. "Resilience like yours is rare," he said quietly, "and it doesn't go unnoticed." As they sat together, the conversation shifted naturally from Noah's routines to lighter topics. Leela began to feel a growing trust toward Ethan, his guidance, and support were steady, compassionate, and genuine. Each interaction strengthened the bond forming between them, subtle yet undeniably present. Noah babbled happily, reaching for Ethan, who responded with patience and warmth, deepening the child's trust and allowing Lila a moment of respite. Watching the way Ethan handled both her and Noah with respect and care, Leela's heart softened. The evening concluded with them walking toward the parking area, Ethan subtly ensuring that Lila and Noah were secure and comfortable. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly, almost as a promise. and you never will be, at least as long as I can help. Leela met his gaze, a mixture of gratitude and cautious hope reflecting in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I wasn't sure if anyone could step in and understand. Ethan offered a faint smile, a hint of warmth breaking his composed exterior. I understand more than you realize, and I'll continue to be here both for Noah and for you. As the city lights flickered around them, the bond between Lila and Ethan deepened. The trust, admiration, and subtle hints of romance laid a foundation for something enduring, built on courage, respect, and shared experience. In that quiet, luminous evening, the beginnings of a slow burning connection were clear, forged not from luxury or power, but from shared responsibility, empathy, and the undeniable strength of a woman who had saved a life and captured the attention of a billionaire CEO in the process. The morning sun poured through the airport windows, reflecting on the polished floors and illuminating the bustle of travelers. Lila Harper held Noah close, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Alex's cold rejection, her struggle to navigate the city with a newborn, and Ethan Blackwell stepping in unexpectedly, offering safety, reassurance, and a promise that had changed everything. Ethan stood beside her, calm and composed, yet there was a warmth in his gaze that Leela hadn't anticipated. He knelt slightly to meet Noah's eyes, adjusting the baby in her arms with gentle precision. He's comfortable? He asked softly. Yes, Leela replied, voice quiet but steady. Thanks to you. Ethan shook his head slightly, a faint smile appearing. I didn't do this for thanks. I did it because it needed to be done, and because you've been handling so much on your own. That takes courage. Lila felt a small flush rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to being recognized, let alone praised by someone with such authority and presence. Her eyes met Ethan's, and she saw sincerity, respect, and something more, a subtle invitation for trust. Alex appeared across the terminal, attempting to approach, his expression a mixture of awkwardness and lingering entitlement. Leela, I just wanted to. Ethan stepped slightly in front of her, protective yet calm. Alex, he said, his voice low but firm, Noah is safe. If you intend to be part of his life, it will be with responsibility and respect. Until then, step back. Alex's posture faltered. The arrogance he had carried into the airport moments ago had been neutralized by Ethan's authority and composure. He realized, perhaps too late, that his opportunity to assert dominance or control had vanished. Lila held Noah closer, her chest rising and falling with relief. Thank you, she whispered to Ethan, her voice a mixture of gratitude and quiet trust. Ethan nodded. No thanks needed. Your bravery, your care, and your strength are what mattered. And I'll continue to help, not just for Noah, but for you too, if you'll allow it. For the first time in weeks, Leela allowed herself to breathe. The heavy weight of responsibility momentarily lifted. She realized that trust and support could come from unexpected places, and that sometimes a single act of courage could forge connections strong enough to change lives. Over the following days, Ethan worked discreetly to provide stability for Leela and Noah, arranging safe housing and support without undermining her independence. Their interactions became natural, filled with quiet laughs, shared responsibilities, and a growing admiration that neither could deny. Every time he observed her handling Noah, her composure and empathy deepened his respect, and a subtle, slow-burning romantic tension began to form. One evening, as the sun set over the city's skyline, Ethan and Leela walked along a quiet riverside park, Noah asleep in his stroller. They talked softly about small things, school plans, city life, the baby's routines, but beneath the calm conversation, a bond was forming. Trust had been built in the crucible of crisis, and admiration had blossomed into something more intimate. I want you to know, Ethan said quietly, that you've handled everything with incredible strength, and I admire you more than I can say. Leela looked at him, her heart pounding. I don't know what to say, she murmured. You don't have to, he replied, stepping closer. Just know that I'm here, always. For Noah, for you, for both of you. Her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes reflecting both relief and a newfound hope. The story concluded with cinematic resolution. Noah safe and cherished, Leela recognized and supported, Ethan redeemed through decisive action and protective care, and a subtle romance beginning to flourish between the two built on trust, admiration, and shared experience. The ex, Alex, had been held accountable emotionally, and the lives of Leela and her baby were forever changed by courage, empathy, and an unexpected act of kindness.